Morning. It's not going to work. Okay. Uh, Glad to be able to give you a lesson from God's word this morning. And as I usually try to do, I try to give what I call Jordan parables. They are certainly way worse than Jesus parables, but I try to apply scripture to my life to try to make it feel more real for me. So hopefully it feels more real for you guys as I go along here. And so this morning I want to talk about role models. And this is for a couple reasons. Number one, I've noticed this phenomenon that happens when um, I'm around someone younger and I say a phrase that I don't think is very annoying. And then after I've heard it like 1,000 times from a smaller person, I was like, I don't remember saying that, but they paid attention. They watched me way more closely than I'd ever realized. And so there's an importance coming there about someone looking up to you. And second, Lord willing, coming around March, I'm going to have a couple new eyes looking at me now. And I'm like, wow, I got to make sure I get my act together here to make sure that I'm a good role model for this future generation of people here. And so that's kind of what led me to talking about role models this morning. And so we're going to look at the importance of role models, some examples, both bad and good examples from both Old Testament and New Testament, and then some generic takeaways. I didn't have a better point name for the last one, so takeaway is kind of my really one. It's kind of just what we can use in our everyday lives, hopefully. And so, first off, starting with the importance of role models. If we look over in Proverbs chapter 1 and verse 8, it says, "Listen, my son, to your father's instructions, and do not forsake your mother's teaching." And up until recently, I thought all of this was on like the child. It was like, okay, make sure you listen to your parents. But now that I'm about to enter the other side of this, I'm like, I gotta make sure I got good instructions here. I gotta make sure that what I'm saying. So this verse has taken on more meaning for me. So first off, it's selfishly very timely for me, this sermon and this topic. And so this is why I'm looking at it. But I think this is also something we can all resonate with because we all had parents at some point, and a lot of us are parents. And so I think you kind of reflect on what kind of instruction we gave. And I don't think that ever stops because I still call my father for advice, usually of the vehicular mechanical aspect, but just in general, I need his advice on a lot of things still. And my mother as well. It's just usually my car is doing worse than my motherly needs. So the importance of parents still being there for you and being role models for you, I think just doesn't go away. Second, over in Proverbs chapter 13 and verse 20, it says, "Walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffer harm." And there are tons of other proverbs that talk about this. If I went through all of them, we'd be here all day. But basically, it's like the people around you affect you. So I need to make sure that the people that I'm around, because they kind of become role models for you, even if they're your friends and stuff, you kind of start to gain attributes from them. And you can see this when you start a new relationship with anybody, whether it be a friendship or something more, you can kind of like pick up attributes from them. I still haven't picked up the attribute of like going to bed on a nice time by Dana, but I think it's almost worked the reverse where she stays up later now. So we grab attributes from the people around us, and we need to make sure, especially spiritually speaking, we need to make sure the people we're surrounding ourselves with are leading us down the right path here. Because otherwise, it says we're going to suffer some harm. It seems that bad things are going to happen to us. So it's important to try to be a good role model and find those good people to surround yourself with. And it's kind of echoed over in 1 Corinthians chapter 15 and verse 33, where it says, "Do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character." And this one hits home for me, especially because I think sometimes, like, I won't be affected by that. I'll put myself in situations be like, well, maybe I can help them rise up in this situation. Like, I won't be affected by the bad stuff happening. That doesn't happen. Well, I watched this British show a few years ago, and at the end of everything he was saying, I ended it with like a question, like, yeah, because the show did that because it's a very British thing to do, and that's like the silliest thing, but I was corrupted by the British influence in my. No, it's just something as silly as that affected me in this, and I didn't even realize it. Is the scariest part. I was just talking to someone. They're like, "Why do you do that?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" They're like, "You just end everything with yeah with a question mark." I'm like, "Oh no, it's got me." And it was that's a silly thing, right? But it could be far more serious, and that's my point. That I didn't even see it happening. I was just being me, and it just kind of snuck in there and got me. And that's what bad role models can do to us. They can kind of affect your good character here, and especially spiritually speaking, right? And I'd like to think that most people don't intend to mislead you. I would like to think that most people have the best of intentions when they're speaking with you and just being your friend. But unfortunately, if they're not doing the right thing, they can corrupt you. So finally, over in Matthew chapter 23, verses 1 to 3, it says, Then Jesus said to the crowds and to his disciples, The teachers of the law and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seats. So you must be careful to do everything they tell you, but do not do what they do, for they do not practice what they preach. And so once again, it's very important for us to do what we say. Don't be one of those people that like do as I say, not as I do. And once again, this hits home way too much for me because I'd like to. Sometimes I don't do things that I know I mess up. Like everybody messes up, but now I think I'm gonna have more constant little eyes on me. I'm like, I gotta be on my game big time now because I don't want to say like you can't do that, and then I go and do the same thing. What kind of example is that going to do? And I saw some article about some philosopher, somebody mentioning that children will do what they see you do, not what you tell them to do. That's huge, and that means there's a lot of pressure on us to be a good role model, to act like a good role model, not just talk a good game. We can't talk the big game and not walk the walk. And spiritually speaking, I think this hits home too because unfortunately, sometimes I think we can lean towards the Pharisees a little bit because I think that we believe we understand the law to a good degree, and I think that we're like you should do this, and you should absolutely do this. Are we living that though? Are we living exactly what we're telling them to? Like we need to be able to back that up because the Pharisees weren't. They thought they had the law all under control. They thought they knew it all. They were telling it to everybody, and Jesus like they missed the mark. They're not practicing what they preach. So we got to make sure that we're doing that, not become like these Pharisees here. So, overview here. Children look to their parents' teachings. This is taking on a double meaning for me now. Walk with wise role models. Make sure that the people you surround yourself with are guiding you the right way and not taking you into harm. And bad role models can corrupt us. The people around you do affect you. They affect how you act. Make sure we got some good people around us. And beware of hypocritical role models. Beware of people that say things and then act completely differently. Sometimes they might be in subtle ways, but other times they're pretty big and pretty impactful. So now we've talked about the importance. I want to take a look at some examples here. And the first example comes from a bad example from the Old Testament over in 1 Kings chapter 13, verses 16 and 19, and then verse 24. It says, The man of God said, I cannot turn back and go with you, nor can I eat bread or drink water with you in this place. I have been told by the word of the Lord, you must not eat bread or drink water there or return by the way you came. So this is, in my opinion, kind of an odd account because we don't hear about it much. So I'm going to try to give you a little background here. There's an unnamed man of God here that speaks to Jeroboam. And he's like, bad things happening. Jeroboam's like, can you stay with me and eat? And he's like, I have to go. I cannot stay here. God has commanded me that I don't drink water or eat with anybody here. And so then this verse happens where there's an old prophet from Bethel, an old prophet, someone that has spoken God's truths here in this time. And he then asks him, hey, can you come take food with me? And once again, the man of God is like, nope, God told me I cannot do that. I will not do that. I will not eat with you. Continuing on to verse 18, it says, the old prophet answered, I too am a prophet as you are. And an angel said to me by the word of the Lord, bring him back with you to your house so that you may eat bread and drink water. But he was lying to him. So the man of God returned with him and ate and drank in his house. This one hurts me because I feel awful for the unnamed man of God here. Because this old prophet's like, I'm a prophet just like you. We're like the same. Don't worry. An angel came to me and said it was okay. The guy's like, okay, well, he probably looked up to maybe perhaps even have heard this old prophet and was like, oh, yeah, that's that guy. Yeah. I trust you. Let's do this. And right after this account, the old man of Bethel here gets a true vision from God. It's like, tell that unnamed man of God here, he's dead. He didn't follow my commands. He disobeyed me. He came back and ate with you in this land that I told him not to. Verse 24. As he went on his way, this is the unnamed man of God here, a lion met him on the road and killed him, and his body was left lying on the road with both the donkey and the lion standing beside it. And this wasn't just some random lion that came and attacked him just kind of out of nowhere. The lion didn't kill the donkey, nor did it decimate the body here. Which is a miraculous thing, because if it was going to go on a random attack, this wouldn't have happened. This was God's divine judgment here because he disobeyed him. I would have fallen into the exact same trap. I feel so bad for this guy because he was trying to do what was going on. He was like, no, I won't do that. No, I won't do that. And the guy was like, don't worry, man. We're the same. Follow me. Like, I am a good role model for you. Just listen to me, and it's fine. You're probably exhausted and hungry. Come on. And if food's involved, I'm already there. Like, this is they got me. I'm in. And that's why I feel so bad for this guy, because he fell into this trap of, and you'd think that a prophet would be a good role model to have. Let him down this path of destruction. Terrible, terrible account that happens here in the Old Testament. However, in the New Testament, over in Acts chapter 5, verses 36 and 37, it says, some time ago, Theudas appeared claiming to be somebody, and about 400 people rallied to him. He was killed, and all his followers were dispersed, and it all came to nothing. After him, Judas the Galilean appeared in the days of the census and led a band of people in revolt. He too was killed, and all his followers were scattered. So these couple of verses come from Gamaliel's advice to the people, saying, like, you can't stop something that's backed by God, because a couple people rose up claiming to be somebody. The role model for these people was like, follow me. I am this thing. I can do this. Trust in me. Came to nothing. Another one, Judas, comes along, is like, let's go. Let's lead this new thing. Trust me. Done. Pick the people you follow wisely. And I think this hits especially home for us today, because social media has given a lot of people a platform to gain, maybe not as tyrannical followers, but sometimes maybe. And they can kind of gather these followers around them. It's like, who are you actually following? Like, why did they deserve your respect or admiration or your loyalty? Like, be careful who we follow. Because if they're not Christ and not God, someone's going to fail eventually in some aspects. And if you tie yourself too closely to them, it's going to be awful. So make sure that you pick your role models wisely, because it may come to nothing. So a couple good examples. Old Testament first. So Deuteronomy chapter 4 and verse 5 says, see, I have taught you decrees and laws as the Lord my God commanded me, so that you may follow them in the land you are entering to take possession of it. And this is Moses speaking here. And Moses, in my opinion, this is once again just Jordan's opinion, he's basically like the Jesus of the Old Testament. He led the people out of the land. He kind of rose them up and took them to the promised land, took them to this almost took them into the promised land. He made it right there to the end, but he had his flaws, right? He messed up. But what I think is really incredible about him is that he received the law and then dispersed it among people. And I think that would be incredibly difficult at the time, because we even talked about that at class today. Like, learning new laws and rules and things to live by is difficult and challenging, and maybe sometimes feels too impossible. But Moses took that upon himself to kind of become almost synonymous with the law. And if we look over in John chapter 5 and verse 46, we see, if you believed Moses, you would believe me, for he wrote about me. And Jesus said this. So Jesus is almost like, if you believed Moses was so crucially important to the Jewish people. Why? Because he was the law to them, basically, in the beginning. Of course, they added things and all sorts of things happened, but the core of the law was Moses. It was him. And he was a great example for them to follow, because he ultimately got them into the promised land. He did not make it, once again, I know, because he made us a mistake. And people do make mistakes. That's going to happen. That doesn't mean that you focus on their mistakes, because he led them through incredibly tough times. And he fought on their behalf almost to God multiple times. They're like, do not kill them all, please. I understand they're frustrating. They're frustrating me too, but they're good people, right? Just please let them go into this promised land. And he encouraged them to follow the law that he was given. A New Testament example over in Philippians chapter 1, verses 23 to 26 says, I am torn between the two. I desire to depart and be with Christ, which is better by far, but it is more necessary for you that I remain in the body. Convinced of this, I know that I will remain, and I will continue with you all, with all of you, for your progress and joy in the faith, so that through my being with you again, your boasting in Christ Jesus will abound on account of me. Paul is saying this kind of at the end of his journey. He's exhausted. He's worn out. He's tired. He's lived his life. He's ran the race. He's done so many good things. After an extremely rocky start, to put it mildly, he's come a huge way, and he recognizes kind of his situation as a role model to these people. He's like, I'm done. The best thing for me would be to go and be with Christ. He's like, but I understand you guys still need me. You guys still need my role modeling, if you will, to help guide you to Christ. He doesn't want the followers for himself, right? He understands that it's not for his glory, but he's following Christ. And I know that because over in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 1, it says, follow my example as I follow the example of Christ. So Paul's not trying to gain all the attention for himself. He's like, follow me only because I am following Christ. That's the only reason you should look after my example, because I'm following Christ and he's the perfect example. But he recognized himself as a role model. And I've really never like fully appreciated that, because he understood his role. I keep saying the word role, it just comes up a lot in normal talks. He understood what his role was to play in being this role model for them. He understood that they're looking to me. I have a responsibility to be the best that I can and to follow Christ as best as I can, because I got people looking at me. And I think that we need to kind of appreciate that too, and do our best, since there'll be lots of people looking at us. So the old prophet lied to the man of God. You wouldn't expect a prophet to be as deceptive as this, and you think that that could be someone you follow, but he wasn't. He let him down. Theudas and Judas tricked the people. They convinced them that they had something to follow. They were like, I know what I'm doing, come after me. And it ended in ruin for the people. Moses received and practiced the law. He didn't just hoard it to himself. He didn't just keep these commands like, you guys didn't follow, because they didn't know. He spread it out to everybody and became the leader of the people and took them, let's get almost into the promised land. He led them to there and got them in there. Ultimately, he was not able to join them. And Paul stuck around for the people. He was done. He was tired, but he stuck around because he understood the role he had to play. He understood what he meant to the people at that time, and they still needed him. And so, some takeaways for us. Over in Philippians chapter 3 and verse 17 to 19, it says, join together in following my example, brothers and sisters, and just as you have us as a model, keep your eyes on those who live as we do. For as I have often told you before and now tell you again, even with tears, many live as enemies of the cross of Christ. Their destiny is destruction, their God is their stomach, and their glory is in their shame. Their mind is set on earthly things. And so once again, Paul is kind of encouraging us to look for people like him. So once again, he wasn't gaining it for just him. Otherwise, he wouldn't have included these other people. But it's once again because he's following Christ. Look for good role models that exist. Look for people out there that you can follow, because it's tough. Life is hard. There are many people that live as enemies of the cross of Christ. There are many people that are living incorrectly. They can trip you up. They can sabotage you. Be careful about the role models that you select. And I would further add, just be careful of adding so much admiration and devotion to them, because if they're flawed people, because they are people, they're going to mess up at some point. They're going to let you down. And that can be devastating if you put too much trust and faith in them. So once again, just make sure we pick careful ones and make sure that they're not just looking at the earthly things, because it's so easy to kind of fall in that trap and just focus on the here and now and the temporal existence that we live in. And I totally get that, because we're temporal beings. We're here in this world. We're like, I see all the nice things people have. I kind of want the nice things. And if you get sidetracked down this path and kind of follow the wrong people, are like, look at how successful that person is. Are they really? There's so many billionaires that have had divorces and their lives seem in shambles. If you really look at them, but you're like, they're so successful. They're so powerful. If you pick those as role models, it's not going to end up good for you. It's going to be rough. Over in 1 Peter chapter 2 and verse 12, it says, let's live such good lives among the pagans that though they accuse you of doing wrong, they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day he visits us. And Jesus talks about this same thing kind of in the Sermon on the Mount. We are supposed to go out there and shine the light of Christ. We're not supposed to draw the attention to us. We're supposed to shine it out so that they can see God's glory. They can see him. We're supposed to kind of enlighten in that way. We're not supposed to gain the attention. And I like the analogy of the light because whenever you turn on a light, you don't like look directly at the light. And if you do, see a doctor or something. No, there's because that hurts the eyes. Like if you turn on the light and stare directly at it, you're like that's not the purpose of the light. The purpose of the light is to illuminate the area. And we're supposed to illuminate Christ. That's our goal. We're not supposed to gain the attention, which is great because I don't like attention much anyways, but it's also double great because that's what we're called to do anyways. We're called to shine this light out. So over in 1 Corinthians chapter 8, verses 9 to 12, it says, "Be careful, however, that the exercise of your rights does not become a stumbling block to the weak. For if someone with a weak conscience sees you, with all your knowledge, eating in an idol's temple, won't that person be emboldened to eat what is sacrificed to idols?" So as we're being this good role model and shining this light out, make sure we don't trip up other people. Make sure we don't become a stumbling block for them. And this one hits home for me, especially because you're going to run into people at different points in their journey all the time. And if you're doing something they're like, that makes me very uncomfortable. Why is that correct? I don't understand. And then they try to do that, they'll think that more things are correct and it'll kind of cause them to go to ruin. If we continue here in verse 11, it says, "So this weak brother or sister for whom Christ died is destroyed by your knowledge. When you sin against them in this way and wound their weak conscience, you sin against Christ." It's detrimental to them if you continue to do the things that you know are right, but it causes them to stumble. The goal is to uplift and to bring other people to Christ. It's not to show off your knowledge of scripture and be like, well, I am being the best proper Christian that I. No, no, no. It's to restore those people. Now, can you still do those things that are correct? Absolutely, you can. You cannot cause other people to stumble, though, if you know that it's a stumbling block for them. Don't get in their way. Because verse 11, it hurts me to. So this weak brother, sister, for whom Christ died, is destroyed by your knowledge. Christ died for that person, and you're just going to let him fall and be like, well, should have known better. Should have been as smart as me. Sorry. You just leave him behind? That is not the Christian attitude to have at all. So as we're being this role model in life, don't knock down the people that aren't on your level. That is such an arrogant stance to take, and we cannot afford to do that. So takeaways: find those who act like Paul, Christ ultimately. Make sure we have those as our role models. And when you're being a role model, shine your lights and good deeds out. Make sure that you shine those out and show those to the people of this world. And do not become a stumbling block. Don't trip up other people because of your arrogance. We cannot do that. So in conclusion, role models play an important role in our growth. They help us to develop, they help us physically and spiritually and mentally, everything. They help us to grow and become better. Luckily, we have plenty of examples to learn from. We have both good and bad examples to see. We have people that took advantage of situations and people that really thrived in them. And remember, our takeaways as we go out into this world, make sure that we are being that perfect, as perfect as we can be, because perfection is something we can never attain, but we need to try to get as close as we can. And so let's try to imitate Jesus as best as we can. And so there's a lot of things the Bible tells us to do. They've kind of been distilled to these few steps that we see before us here. And so if anyone's been struggling with anything along their journey, if they've picked some bad role models, if they need some new role models, if you want to talk about anything or struggling in any way, I'd love to chat with you. Someone here would love to chat with you. But if you do want to become baptized and join the church, God would love to do that. And we'd love to assist you with that. If you have any needs, please come forward to stand and sing the invitation song.